Birdlife has been very active in campaigning with other leading conservation organisations for better nature laws. Andrew and Logan will give an update on what's happening nationally, particularly our campaign calling for the federal government to deliver strong nature laws and save our threatened birds from extinction. Joining them also will be Cathy Goswell, talking about the advocacy for better nature laws being done by our branch, by Southern New South Wales. Cathy's a member of our management committee and also the conservation subcommittee. She leads this very important aspect of our conservation advocacy. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Judy, for that fantastic introduction. And thank you for everyone online for joining us today and for having Logan and I from the national office to talk a little bit more about the Nature Laws campaign. And really glad that Cathy Goswell is going to be talking about the work that she's been doing for the last couple of years. So let me just share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. I'll get the full screen. All right. Yes, I don't need to introduce myself. Thank you, Judy. But we'll just say I'm calling from the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation down here in Melbourne. And yeah, we'll be giving a quick overview of our kind of biggest campaign at Birdlife Australia, and that's to secure national new nature laws. Before I do, so here's just a quick summary of some things that you'll find out today. We'll keep it pretty high level because I'm sure there's many of you online today that have been following this campaign for a while, but there might be some newbies to the mix. So we want to keep it at a pretty high level, but if you have any questions, happy to take them at the end, or you can always contact me and Logan afterwards. We'll give you a quick history of the campaign, how it links to our new ambitious bird conservation strategy, an update on the proposed reforms in the political situation. And then Logan will talk a little bit more, and Cathy as well, about the local community action that really drives the campaign. Some timelines and opportunities for you to get involved if you're keen in the next couple months. But before I do, I really just want to shout out another BirdLife Network group, BirdLife Southern Queensland, for their amazing win to save the Ramsar listed wetlands in Moreton Bay at Toondah Harbour. Hopefully everyone has been following that campaign. It's probably one of the biggest nature campaigns that we've ran at BirdLife Australia, and definitely one of our biggest wins. And it was really driven by the local community and by these women here. So Judith Hoyle, Sheena Gilman, and Cathy Clark from BirdLife Southern Queensland. And it's really just a strong showcase of how local groups across the BirdLife Australia network can really drive conservation wins with the support from the national office. And I know that BirdLife Southern New South Wales, you've been doing a lot of work in port hacking as well. So it's just, I think if we can keep these campaigns going, because the Toondah Harbour campaign was 7 years in the making. It often takes a long time to win these campaigns. So keep it going. But really wanted to talk about the campaign for new nature laws, because there's a Toondah Harbour, there's a port hacking everywhere across the country. Unfortunately, habitat destruction and land clearing is happening at a very intense rate in Australia. Currently, from the latest action plan for Australian birds, it's estimated that 1 in 6 of our native birds are at risk of extinction, and that's due to threats like land clearing, habitat destruction, climate change, and invasive species. And really at the crux of why that is happening is because we have broken national nature laws that really undermines the incredible work that Margot and the conservation team are doing to try to restore and protect habitat. While they're doing that, there's habitat that's being destroyed by large-scale developments, mining proposals, urban development proposals all across the country. And that's why for the last couple of years, BirdLife has really been driving this campaign together with some other national NGOs to secure stronger national nature laws. And it's been identified in our new bird conservation strategy as a critical component in the critical pathway to reach our ambitious objectives of no new extinctions in the next 10 years, reducing the threatened species populations by 30%, and reducing overall bird population declines. So the problem with our nature laws, which is called the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, or EPBC Act, It's really just not meeting its objectives. There's quite a few different things that are wrong with it, but the three kind of highlights that I want to focus on here are the loopholes and exemptions. So that's allowing for regional forestry agreements to destroy habitat critical to the survival of swift parrots in southern New South Wales and Tasmania. It's the lack of compliance and enforcement that allows that massive scale of illegal land clearing and even legal land clearing that I talked about, and allows high levels of ministerial discretion. And that was the clear case study with Toondah Harbor. Even if we know sites are internationally and nationally protected under Ramsar agreements, there's discretion that a minister can ignore the advice of their department and progress development applications in those sites to the next stage of approval. And that was what happened at Toondah Harbor. So Birdlife's, I guess, 4 kind of fixes for our nature laws, to sum them up, are we need laws that prevent extinctions and recover threatened wildlife. We need to enact robust rules and standards to protect and restore nature. We need to build an agency that has the grit to apply and enforce these rules. And then we need to improve accountability and public trust. And if we can do all 4 of those things, then we can fix our broken nature laws and start to stop the destruction and recover nature. So a quick quiz. I might have already given it away, sorry if I did, but if you just want to put in the chat, how many years do you reckon Birdlife has been campaigning for strong nature laws? I think it's 100, I think it's 2, I think it's 6. See if anyone has any guesses in the chat. 100. Oh, wow, 6? Yeah, I'm gonna say, well, we could probably argue it's 100 because we've been around in some form of fashion as Birdlife for over 100 years. But really, our campaign kicked off in 2018, so it's been about 6 years that we've been really hard campaigning hard on this campaign for strong nature laws. So here's a quick kind of campaign timeline of where we've been and where we're going. So I mentioned we kicked off the campaign in 2018. We published a report calling Restoring the Balance that had some case studies for where we have identified that broken nature laws are impacting birds and nature. We can send a link to that report if anyone's interested. It's got case studies like the swift parrot in Toondah Harbor. And we really launched that campaign in 2018 because we knew there was a critical moment, and that was the independent review of the EPBC Act. So our nature laws have to be reviewed every 10 years, and the next one, I guess the most recent one, was in 2019 and 20, and that was conducted by Professor Graham Samuel after consulting with conservationist, scientist, and across the sector, he concluded that the EPBC Act was failing to meet its objectives. It was inherently broken, and there needed to be, he recommended, significant reforms. This was during the term of the Morrison government. In response, they proposed some amendments that would have devolved decision-making back to the states. Birdlife Australia and some other groups really campaigned against that bill because we saw it as a significant problem where we lose that national oversight for nature and threatened species. And luckily, it was stopped in the Senate. In 2022, after a change of government, the Albanese government released their nature positive plan, which was a direct response to the Graham Samuel independent review of the EPBC Act. And part of that nature positive plan, the government committed to protecting 30% of Australia's land and sea by 2030. And also committed a very ambitious goal of no new extinctions in the next 10 years. So as part of that nature positive plan, they set out a reform package to fix our broken nature laws. And in 2023, they launched the very first part of this nature positive plan, and that was with the nature repair market bill. And then throughout 23 and earlier this year, they engaged with stakeholders, including Birdlife Australia and other national NGOs, in closed-door consultation on the next stages of the reforms. Last month, in early April, which I'll talk to shortly, they announced a new Environment Protection Australia, or EPA, and an Environment Information Australia, or EIA. And that's where we're up to right now. So from the rest of the year until the end of this term of government, we're not quite sure what they're going to do. We have some thoughts on what we think they should do, and I'll definitely be getting to that shortly. So as I mentioned, the government last month, Minister Plibersek announced that the government was establishing 2 new agencies, the Environment Protection Australia and the Environment Information Australia. So the EPA would have that kind of national oversight and have that decision-making responsibility for development proposals like a Toondah Harbour or massive land clearing proposals. And the Environment Information Australia, EIA, would be a national data repository where databases like bird data could feed into that, and that could go to decision making. On the whole, we think this is a good start, but unfortunately, unless we get the full package of the reforms, it's just going to be enforcing the current EPBC Act, which we know is inherently broken. So unless we get that full reform, these alone will not fix nature destruction, I should say. So what next? So we really need to get the rest of that package. So get the national environmental standards, a brand new EPBC Act that will make sure that nature is genuinely protected and get the best outcome from what's been already built. So these 2 new proposals will be working with the crossbench for amendments to make sure that the new EPA and the EIA bills are as strong as possible. So going back to those kind of 4 key asks for strong new nature laws, we still don't have those first 2. So preventing extinctions and recovery threatened wildlife, what's being proposed now, we are not confident that will prevent extinctions, and it definitely will not recover threatened wildlife. The recent budget was released earlier this week, and unfortunately there was no new funding for threatened species recovery or protection. So the level of funding to actually prevent and recover wildlife is going down, and we still have not seen the robust rules. Those environmental standards have not been introduced. So for the next year, and really leading until next year into the federal election, we'll be pushing for those new amendments on the EIA and EPA bill. But also we'll be really pushing the government to commit to enacting those new environmental standards by the end of the year. And then for next year, we'll really start to ramp up our campaign heading into a federal election. If we do not get those 2, those environmental standards by the end of the year, we'll want to make sure that all sides of politics commit to enacting those environmental standards in the next term. And then, we'll definitely be talking to you about how we can take some actions during the federal election. So I'll just hand over to Logan to talk a little bit more about the tactics that we'll be rolling out for this campaign over the next coming months. Thanks, Logan.
Hi, everyone. So people who haven't met me, I'm Logan. I'm based on Gubbi Gubbi in Tinnaburra country in Queensland, and I'm the community organiser. So a large part of my role is making sure our community, our supporters, all our bird lovers all across the country, Birdlife and otherwise, are really engaged on this campaign, and they're really taking the action we need to get the reforms we need, because we know the government, it's just not a priority for them right now, so we need to make sure that they see it's a priority for the community. So we're on the ground, we're seeing what's happening, and we're really like part of the solution here. And we through this local area advocacy that branches all across the country doing, we're collecting the evidence, we're understanding the environment, and we're engaging with that community to find these solutions and find out what we need to save our threatened birds. And we're really involved in local participation and collaboration all across the country with Birdlife supporters and other NGOs trying to push the change and enact the solutions on the ground. So we jump to the next slide. This is a bit of an exclusive just for you guys. We haven't officially announced this yet, but in July, we're going to be pushing really aggressively to make sure the government are hearing from us that we need these solutions, we need these new standards, we need these new laws to come in that will fix nature and aren't broken. So in July, we're asking people to take on a month of action all across Australia. So the big ask, we're asking them to meet with their local MPs and take them on a bird walk. So Birdlife is a non-partisan organisation, so we're really keen to work with both sides of politics. So even if you're not meeting with a local Labor MP, that's fine. Meet with Liberals, Greens, Teals, anyone's really important because we want all sides of politics to understand what we're asking for, especially with an election coming up soon. We don't know what things are going to look like in a year. We want everyone on board with this. We want people to be engaging and educating their network about the need for strong nature laws, because it's really important that as many people as possible are pushing for this and talking about this to make it a real conversation that the politicians can't escape from. Obviously there's something they're not prioritizing, but they need to hear from us that it's a priority for us, and then it puts a lot more pressure on them to have to do something. So we're going to be mobilising supporters for a week of action, which the details will be coming for pretty soon. But we'll be getting people to do things like signing open letters, doing online and digital actions, but also doing actions on the ground in their communities, where they're talking to their community, they're talking to their MP, they're making a lot of noise, and really making this an issue that people can't ignore. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to support people to do that if they're interested, because we know it's not as simple as just go do this thing and expecting everyone to do it. So we're going to be running quite a long series of webinars that will give people the tools, the resources, and the information they need to make this happen. So it's teaching people how to meet with their MPs, teaching people how to talk about nature laws, giving them as much support as they need in that space. We're also going to be creating a digital organising space where people who are really involved in and really want to be a part of this process all across the country can come together and meet with us, chat with us and learn from us, but also like learn from each other. So hypothetically, you could be working on a project in Southern New South Wales, but there's a group in WA doing a similar action over there, and you can work together and sort of get a feel for what they're doing that's working really well and learn from each other, and maybe give them advice as well if they're doing things that aren't working but you're really successful. Also going to be providing people some really strong talking points to give them advice on how they can talk about nature laws and how they can, explain the issue to their community. This could also be a really good opportunity to invite people to come to your bird walks that you're running regularly as a branch anyway, and use that as an opportunity to educate about nature laws, or even invite your MP along to come to those sort of events, and use those talking points to really make that conversation piece in July. So just to get a bit of a feel for this, I'm just interested, maybe we can, if we get everyone to put your hands up like this, if there's something you're really interested in or think could be really valuable, like that. If you're interested but might need much more information, and then hands down if it's something you're not particularly interested in, just so I can get a bit of a feel for if this is something that is worth pursuing. Yeah, so a few hands up, that's pretty good, pretty exciting. So yeah, you'll hear a lot more about this soon. This is very early stages still. Like I said, you're the first people to hear about this, really exclusive. What I will do is I'll put my email in the chat for everyone. So if you want to get in touch with me as well, we'll put together some more information about this that we can bring out to people and be engaging with people as like Q&As and webinars to get a bit more information, and we'll start planning this out. But this is just like a very early launch. So yeah, if you are interested, please get in touch by my email. This is in the chat. And the final point, I do want to just have as an open question on the final slide. If this is something you are interested in, what support do you think you need to make this happen? Because I know it's a big ask. It will take some work to make something like this happen. Are there things that you think you really need from us as the national office to make that a realistic proposition for you? So yeah, if you just want to talk, if you do have any things like things that you think you might need or questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to those.
Great, Logan, I might just stop sharing my screen because that's the end of our formal presentation. I might just say as part of our campaign, so we've been working with the Places You Love Alliance, which is a large alliance of the biggest national environmental NGOs in the country, but also a lot of state and regional groups that are all campaigning for strong nature laws. So this includes WWF, the Australian Conservation Foundation, the Wilderness Society, the conservation councils of each state. So we're all working collectively on this bigger campaign, and we're also doing it individually through our individual campaigns. And as part of that is we're trying to demonstrate support for strong nature laws across the sector. So the business community, farmers, landholders, and we do have a few open letters. So if anyone is a landholder or a business owner and is keen to support those open letters, please let us know. We can give them to you. You can sign on, and then we can put you in touch with another campaigner that's really starting to ramp up that campaign. We're trying to get at least 100 businesses, so we can go to government and say it's not just greenies that want to protect nature. It's also critical to the economy to have a strong nature. And I guess the other thing is, I mentioned the EPA and EIA bill. Sorry to use acronyms. The Environment Protection Australia and Environment Information Australia. Those bills we're expecting to be introduced to Parliament in the next week or two, or early June. Kate Miller, our CEO, will be joining Places You Love CEOs in Canberra in early June. So we'll make sure that nature has a voice whenever that bill is being introduced, and we will be working with the crossbench to make sure that we get strong amendments to that. Do we have any questions?
There's a couple of questions in chat, Andrew, you might look at there while Cathy gives her short presentation, please.
Yeah, cool.
Cathy?
Oh.
You're muted.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, now.
Presentation okay? Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. I'm speaking from the land of the Wallamadigal in the middle of Sydney on the north side of the Parramatta River. I've been involved in this campaign probably since, early 2023, when Birdlife first sent out a call to its branch members and supporters to contact their federal MPs or senators about the need for much stronger nature laws. The call came out from a lot of other conservation groups as well, and there were a number of informative webinars, and Birdlife launched a toolkit of resources on the website, which is still available and really helpful. And we decided to participate and act and try and develop some relationships with the federal MPs that are within our geographic area, which we really hadn't done in the past. This is a challenge for us because Birdlife Southern New South Wales and ACT is very geographically large. We really had to think about, well, exactly what federal electorates do we cover, and who are our federal MPs and senators, and what's the best way to try and engage with them. So I think many of our members don't really understand who or what the branch is. The branch is large, and it's actually defined by postcodes. And Southern New South Wales is all of these postcodes on this map that are coloured orange, which you can see is a very large geographic area and quite diverse in the way it's structured, and not a complete entity. To the north, those postcodes are allocated to Birdlife Northern New South Wales. On the centre to the right, we have a small area that's carved out for Birdlife Shoalhaven around the Nowra and Shoalhaven River area. Then there's a separate Birdlife Southern Tablelands centred on Bowral, carving out a number of postcodes all around that area there. And then along the Murray River, there are 3 essentially Victorian Birdlife branches. Birdlife Ovens and Murray, Birdlife Bendigo Echuca, and Birdlife Mildura, who actually include a lot of the postcodes in that southern area of the state. So I guess this posed a challenge to us. How do we approach the MPs that are actually within our branch? And so these are the maps of the federal electorates that were applicable to the 2022 federal election. On the left, you get the regional areas, but of course we also cover the very urban areas of Sydney, Newcastle and Illawarra and the ACT. So overlaying that, I identified that there were 47 electorates, federal electorates, that potentially have Birdlife Southern New South Wales members and supporters, and that we should be responsible for trying to contact. So what we did was, having identified those 47 electorates, which are actually 31% of all the federal electorates in Australia, we drafted a letter using National Officers templates and contacted each of those MPs individually with an offer of a bird walk in their electorate and a request for a meeting with the MP to discuss the need for new nature laws and specifically setting out the 5 key asks that Birdlife had nominated and which Andrew touched on in his presentation. So following that initial contact, we had 8 acceptances. This is in mid to late 2023. 5 were in-office meetings, and 3 were bird walks, 4 with Labor MPs, 2 with Liberal MPs, and 2 with Teal Independents. And I'll let you know who they were in case they're actually electorates that you might be located in. It was Fiona Phillips in Gilmore, Allegra Spender in Wentworth, Sally Situ in Reid, Melissa McIntosh in Lindsay, Kylie Tink in North Sydney, Don Rapicoli in the Hunter, Dr. Mike Freelander in Macarthur, and Paul Fletcher in Bradfield. And in addition to that, we've also had contact with Julie and Lisa in Berowra and Jerome Lixal in Bennelong. And so from really having no relationships with MPs, we felt this was quite a successful first attempt. So what we did was then approach supporters that we had located in those electorates where we had meetings or walks organised, and invited them to attend and discuss local environmental issues, as well as the need for stronger nature laws. And we've got some photos here of a few of us, only a few at a time. We didn't want to overwhelm the MPs with a cast of thousands, but these were just general people who are our supporters without necessarily a great knowledge of birds even, or of the legislation, but members of the electorate who were interested to meet in person their MP and just pass on their good wishes and perhaps talk about some of their own personal concerns with what was going on in their electorate. and all of the events went very well, and we received a lot of support from the MPs that we met. So I guess in conclusion, I guess so far what I've drawn from the actions that we took in beginning to build these relationships, it is very important to have local constituents present at the meetings. And it definitely builds the relationships straight away. We worked with other groups as well, as Andrew mentioned, and Logan. In particular, in Sydney, ACF Wilderness Society, who are also members of Places You Love Alliance, and worked with several of the local birding groups, with people who are interested in the issue. It's important to relate to local issues. And the challenges that we've had in organising meetings, and I guess passing over our messages, are that particularly ministers and MPs that National Office and the Places You Love Alliance would like us to target won't necessarily engage with the excuse, which is probably true in ministers in particular, that they're very busy, they have a lot on their plate, and finding time for a meeting is difficult. As you can see, our branch has a very large geographic area, so it's challenging for us to engage and be aware of local issues in regional areas, and to source members and supporters who are located in those regional areas who would be prepared to visit their MP. Our membership and supporters are quite unevenly located in electorates across the branch, and we're particularly lacking in South and Western Sydney and in regional New South Wales, but stronger in the Northern Sydney, in the Illawarra and in the Hunter region. So that makes it more challenging for us to engage with some MPs. And also our membership and supporters aren't necessarily representative of a lot of the cultural groups that are in many of the important electorates we'd like to engage those federal MPs in. Another challenge is that our branch has some very large urban areas within its catchment, and in a lot of those urban areas, the message about the importance of biodiversity, environment, green spaces doesn't really carry all that well, because they are so densely populated and have lost so much of their green spaces already. So it means we have to really work on our different messages for different electorates. So
Thank you,
for our
Cathy.
branch,
We'll need to be moving on.
Yeah, no, I'm just about to finish. So for our branch, the work's ongoing. We want to continue developing relationships and meet more MPs. And if anyone is interested in organising a meeting or a walk, I certainly am very happy to come along or give advice about how to go about it. So thank you.
Thank you